What's going on, guys? Welcome back to Resurrect. Today we are on part 4 of our E92 M3 rebuild. This is long overdue, but this ended up being a much bigger job than I anticipated. Originally I was hoping just to section out a short section of the frame rail. However, after doing some further inspections, I realized that there's just more damage than I originally anticipated, and that usually is the case with frame damage. So we're going to have to replace both frame rails all the way back to the firewall. So this is a fairly large job. Now, most of the procedure, the guidelines that we're using for this repair were taken from BMWTechinfo.com, and that's a website where you can get all of the OEM repair procedures for any BMW product, whether it be mechanical repairs, body repairs. You can get recalls and all kinds of useful information, all for either a daily, monthly, or yearly rate. So there are also other free resources available online, but BMW Tech Info is going to have the most current and up-to-date resources available. And most of the major auto manufacturers have similar websites that you can access for a fee, but it's well worth it, and it's well worth checking the repair procedure before you get started to make sure that you have all the tools necessary to do the job and that you can carry it out in the right way. So I want to talk a little bit about frame measuring. Now, with the frame measuring system that we have, that's going to be a great tool to make sure that those frame rails are in the perfect position before we start welding. Because if they're not, if they're over one way or over the other, or they're this way or that way, we might not be able to get the subframe back into position. And also, the car might not line up right. It might just behave weirdly or handle strangely. So we want to make sure that we're going to make this repair right. So the frame measuring system helps quite a bit. Now, if we did not have that frame measuring system, it would be a lot like trying to perform a surgical procedure on a person in the back of a van with a blindfold on. Maybe not that extreme, but you get my point. It's just difficult to do the job without the right tools. So it is possible to do this repair without a frame measuring system. However, it would be much more difficult. You would have to set up the frame rails and then clamp them in place. You could set up the front bumper reinforcement as well as the subframe and make sure that all those holes line up perfectly and they're centered. Then you would want to take a bunch of measurements. You'd want to make sure that the car was perfectly level. That's a lot of work. So with a frame measuring system, that's going to save us a lot of time, and this is going to go a lot faster, but it is possible without the frame measuring system. And we're also going to be using a lot of products to try to ensure that this repair is good quality and it lasts a long time. So the products that we're going to be using are things to help prevent rust in the future. So we have a couple different types of primers we'll be using, as well as a seam sealer and a very good quality cavity wax that we're going to be spraying inside the unibody where we did any welding. And the idea is to not just protect the rust on the outside of the unibody, but also protect from rust building up inside the unibody where we can't get to with our final primer. So there's a lot of different steps you're going to need to do to try to make sure that this repair is decent quality, and we're going to show that to you. We're going to leave links for all of the products we use in this video below so you can check them out. Please do. And let's get started and check out this video. So here are some of the tools that we'll be using today. Some of them are just general tools. You will immediately know what these are. Some of the tools we've already talked about in past videos, but originally I wanted to use other type of grinders for this procedure. However, grinders and cutters I should say, but some of the cutters will not allow you to access certain points on this frame. So we're going to be using this cutter right here. This is a longer reach cutter, and this is great for body repairs. This will allow us to reach certain points that we can't with the other cutters. We're going to be using a Dremel as well with a cutting disc, because sometimes you really need to get those tight, fine cuts in areas you can't get anything else in. And we're going to be using this belt sander or belt grinder. This is great for removing spot welds very quickly. However, you wouldn't always want to use something like this on every spot weld. You would use this on the parts that you don't care about, so trash parts. You could select this tool. However, if you do care about the spot and you want to make sure to reuse a certain part, you're going to want to use a drill with a spot weld cutter, or you could use a regular drill bit as well, but I prefer this spot weld cutter. So I'll have links for all of these tools below, at least the ones that are a little bit you might be less familiar with, so you can check them out for yourself. Please consider using our link to buy these tools if you plan on doing so, because we do get a small commission, but you don't pay any more or less, and that really helps us to grow the channel and produce more content for you guys. The shot glass is in case things go wrong and you're just going to start drinking profusely, and then the water is so you can feel better the next day. Alright, so with the engine and drivetrain removed, you can see what we're going to do. We're going to remove these frame rails. Now there was some bulging here that we couldn't get to, and this probably could be repaired. However, it's just better to remove these frame rails altogether with the kind of damage that we had. So we're going to do that. We're going to section them all the way to the firewall. There is a point where we can cut right here. We're going to measure out that accurately and trace it out where we're going to cut. And we're going to cut through the first layer, and we're going to leave the structural component that's underneath so we can weld the new frame rails onto that. So we're going to have to remove a lot of things here to get to that, and remove some things here to get to the spot welds. So we're getting the frame rails in position, just doing a test fit right now, and I just want to make sure that they kind of fit in the right spot before we weld anything in place. Of course, we're going to measure everything out. We're going to make sure that those frame rails are in the right position by using the frame alignment system. So you can see right back here, those are the seams. That's the sectioning point that's specified by BMW, and behind there is a reinforcement plate, so that's strong. and then all of these will have to be welded up with rosette welds. Same goes for over here. See all the welds. They've been stripped down to bare metal, but we'll have to coat them all with weld-through primer. All the hidden areas, like behind here, this will have to be, you know, underneath here will have to be coated with weld-through primer, as well as this spot where you can't get to later with the good quality black primer. We'll have to use a lot of weld-through primer, and then in the end we're going to use some cavity rust sealer type stuff. It's like an oil that goes inside the frame rail and it prevents it from rusting. Over here, same thing, same spots pretty much. We'll weld them all up and coat it, seal it, and this thing will be ready to go. So we have the vehicle as level as possible. We have the jack stands under the lift there to just make sure that the lift settles at the same exact point. We've checked the levelness of the car with a couple of levels, and we've shimmed it in such a way that the car is as level as possible. Now this is more critical if we were just relying on measurements alone, but with this frame measuring system it's not as critical that the car is completely level. But we've done that just to be sure, because I do want to double check all my measurements and not just completely trust this measuring system. And then we have these RV support lifts that we're kind of using as a jig to set up the frame rails in the right spot, so we can move them up and down and just get them in the right spot before we tack them in. Everything looks pretty good. Everything is within spec. The furthest out of spec I am is I'm down by 2 points here, but that's still within spec. I got everything is zeroed out to zeros and ones, and then as you start welding, the metal will start expanding and contracting and it'll start moving. So in the end, things will kind of move around a little bit, but the goal is to get it as aligned as possible before you start welding, and then keep checking it as you're welding to try to, you know, keep that rail in position, because really every little thing you do, these numbers will change. So right now we have the left side rail is pretty well aligned. The only thing that's out of spec here is the rail is turned to the left 4 points or 4 millimeters here, and then the goal is to get everything in blue and everything as close to zeros as possible, sometimes ones or twos, but as long as we're within spec, I don't have any reason to believe that this car won't line up right. Guys, so there you have it. So far, all we have left to do is put the drivetrain back in the vehicle and reassemble this car. So the drivetrain and the engine is going to go exactly where I'm sitting right here in my temporary frame rail throne that I'm sitting in. It feels quite good. So I don't know, maybe I'll keep the car like this, I don't know. but probably I'll put it back together because I'm sure you guys want to see the finished product. So I'm going to put it back together now. But guys, if you like this video, if you were entertained, if you learned anything at all, or if you're just enraged at this video, please let me know in the comments below. Like the video, and please consider subscribing. I really do appreciate it. And we'll see you on the next video. Thanks again for watching.